Okay, so let's talk about sponsors for a few minutes. Now, I'm currently in a situation of working with fellow governors to decide on a sponsor for the school where I'm chair of governors. And it's been an interesting process because there are sponsors out there, but almost none of them have any experience of sponsoring a primary academy for obvious reasons. It's not their fault, that is just the nature of the game. But it does leave you feeling a little bit vulnerable, and I'm sure they must feel a bit vulnerable too, because although they may have sponsored some secondary academies successfully, it isn't quite the same with a primary. It's a rather different beast, isn't it? I wonder what your thoughts were on that.
I think that's a really interesting one, because I think you referred to Robert Hale's publication earlier, that this whole process of sort of conversion and the way that primaries are now being really incentivised and encouraged to come on is going to bring this up more and more. And I think there's a couple of things in terms of representation. So first of all, to make sure that the primary voice is heard, that within its structure, governance structure, etc., that there is a proper sort of voice and inclusion of obviously primary representation. But it's also about how primaries, perhaps in terms of new models, could be developed into primary families that then have a reporting platform, almost like a primary board that reports into the main board of directors, so that primary-led decisions are being taken by people that know about primaries and not by a higher sort of board of directors within this sponsor organisation that really don't have that level of depth and experience to make informed decisions.
There's a challenge in that as well for primary school head teachers, I think, in particular, who are used to having their own school and their own interests. And, certainly it's not the case but in lots of governing bodies, it is the head teacher will be the driver, and all of a sudden they're going to be competing, if they're in a multi-academy trust, presumably, to its position, and I don't know if there's you can see a jostling sort of situation, and could feel quite threatening, I suppose. How those are issues as well.
Given that one of the arguments for academy status is greater autonomy, and then you end up being a very small fish in an increasingly crowded bowl. Yeah. Does that work? Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. But again, it's about those sharing resources, isn't it? Where perhaps then the head teacher can really focus on raising the standards of provision, and all the business stuff can be dealt with by the federation or the sponsor organisation.
Yeah. So it could be very liberating.
Yes.
Yeah, if it worked well.
Yes, absolutely. But I think it's important to get those reporting mechanisms and structural aspects right in order to deliver the sort of the practical bits that enable the focus to be on teaching and learning, and to try to create inter-federation networks, if you like, that enable that school-to-school support to take place in a way that benefits a greater number of pupils, because where you've got a particular, say, IT specialist in a primary school A, and they're lacking that in B, you've got the ability then to share, lesson plans, professional development, all those sorts of things, which, as you say...
There could potentially be an issue, though, couldn't there, with purchase of services, because if I don't know, I don't think a good example at the moment, but I suppose curriculum related ones would be the most obvious, where head teachers actually had a difference of opinion about what's the best package, or feel very clearly that the best package for their school is X, and the best package for school B in that head's opinion is this. How do you resolve that? Because obviously, as you referred to earlier in that document, to achieve financial viability in primary schools, you need a minimum of 12.
Yeah.
That needs to be
and also,
resolved.
I mean,
and previously you could have decided.
And the sponsor may well have a view anyway.
Yes.
The sponsor may say, actually, this is our preferred model.
And
you will use it.
And we provide these services, so
Yeah.
you will have these services.
Yeah. So again,
there goes your autonomy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's how it's set up to operate, isn't it? Where you've got representation, so that when perhaps a contract for services is up for review, you've then got the opportunity to put that voice back into the mix to say, well, actually, my preferred, phonics provider is this one, and maybe there's an opportunity there for a trial period, so that 2 trials take place running concurrently, and then you have an evaluation to see which ones have the better impact.
Evidence-based policy. Fantastic. How refreshing.
But of course, the directors can just overrule it. You've got the opportunity for the voice, but once you're in it, they can overrule anything, can't they?
They could, but again, you'd have to argue in whose interest would that be. If you're going to be inclusive as an organisation, if you're going to make this work in a way that gets people to sign up to the sort of federation-wide vision and sort of strategy and policy around things, then there's always got to be a little bit of give and take. But I think as long as people have the opportunity, perhaps at sort of scrutiny working group level, to really work through all the options available, whatever it is they're looking to procure, to ensure that.
So that's the challenge for governing bodies then.
So.
Considering potential sponsors, is that those organisations. I can't think what the phrase is, but their ethics, if you like, how they operate towards those.
That's right, because the board of directors has got that very strategically focused remit, and it's a federation-wide remit. They cannot do all of the scrutiny work, and therefore it makes sense for that sort of connection between the board and local governing body level, whether it be secondary, primary, CrossFit, whatever, for the grassroots who know their students really, really well, who know their sort of context really, really well, to be the ones that are coming together to review the proposals and make a recommendation up for the board to approve. So for that piece of work to have taken place, and for the board of directors to say, actually, no, we think something else, that wouldn't make good governance in my view. It would have to be informed on, by the people that will be involved in using it, that have the relative experience, knowledge and skills to make an assessment of the proposals and the options that are available. So, but it does vary, doesn't it? Leadership styles and approaches vary enormously.
Yeah, and actually, well, I think as we've alluded to earlier, the whole issue of sufficient numbers of good quality sponsors is going to become, if not already, the big challenge if the pace picks up in the way it's envisaged.
Yes. I think one of the things that would be worth touching upon is the range of sponsor models, because what you do see through pieces of research published are the huge and very varied range of models operating that are in place, which is fantastic. I think that's really exciting because I think that shows the flexibility that is available to adapt and meet very specific local circumstances in a way that suits them best. It may not work anywhere else in the country, but actually for that set of schools or for that particular context, this is what really works well. And I think it's, as with all things, self-evaluation is important. You set it up phase 1, if you like, work through that maybe for sort of 6 months, a year, take time to evaluate, is this working in the way that we anticipated? And if not, to make changes, whether that be structural, behavioural or whatever it happens to be, but to not think that once you make a decision to convert or to become sponsored by a particular organisation that's the end of it. It is about, I hope, that it's an ongoing review, evaluation to see what needs to adjust to ensure that it's working as effectively as it needs to.